Commander Vic stood on the bridge of his warship and looked at the small blue planet on the screen. It was beautiful in a simple way. Blue oceans covered most of it. Green and brown land masses floated between the waters. White clouds moved slowly across its surface. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "What do we know about this world?" Vix asked, his second-in-command. Lieutenant Knoll stepped forward and read from his data pad. "The planet is called Earth by its inhabitants. They call themselves humans. They have no interstellar travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their technology is primitive. They still use chemical propulsion and projectile weapons." Vix made a clicking sound with his mandibles. This was the Pelleran way of laughing. "Projectile weapons? They throw metal at each other?" "Yes, Commander." "Small pieces of metal propelled by explosive powder." How amusing. Vix turned to look at his fleet through the observation window. 200 ships floated in perfect formation. Each one carried thousands of soldiers. Each one had weapons that could level cities in seconds. "This will be our easiest conquest yet." Knoll hesitated. His antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, there is something strange in the data." "What is it?" "The humans have used nuclear weapons on their own planet. They dropped them on their own cities. Twice." Vix stared at his lieutenant. "They used nuclear weapons on themselves?" "Yes, Commander, during one of their many wars." "And they survived?" "They did more than survive. They rebuilt. They made more weapons. They continued fighting." Vix was quiet for a moment. Then he made the clicking sound again. "They are stupid creatures. They fight among themselves like animals. This makes our job easier. A divided species cannot stand against the Pelleran Empire." He walked to the center of the bridge and raised his voice so all his officers could hear. "Begin the invasion. We will land in multiple locations and establish our dominance. I want this planet under our control within one rotation of their sun." The officers moved quickly to their stations. Commands went out to the fleet. Engines powered up. Ships began moving toward the blue planet. Far below, on the surface of Earth, it was night over the Korean peninsula. The sky was clear and full of stars. A fighter jet cut through the darkness, its engines roaring as it flew over the East Sea. Inside the cockpit, a pilot named Tay checked his instruments. He was running a routine night exercise. Nothing special. He had done this hundreds of times before. His radar showed empty sky in all directions. Then something changed. A blip appeared on his screen. Then another. Then 5 more. They were descending from high altitude at impossible speed. No human aircraft could move like that. Tay pressed his radio button. "Command, this is Eagle 7. I have multiple unknown contacts descending through the upper atmosphere. Speed is..." "Command, the speed reading must be wrong. Nothing moves this fast." Static filled his headphones. Then a calm voice replied, "Eagle 7, we see nothing on our screens. Check your equipment." "My equipment is fine. I am looking at 7 contacts. No, wait, more are appearing. I count 15, 20. Command." "There are dozens of them." "Eagle 7, return to base. Your radar is malfunctioning." Tay wanted to argue, but military training told him to follow orders. He turned his jet toward home, but he kept watching his radar. The contacts were still descending. They were spreading out across the globe. As he flew, he saw something that made his heart stop. A light in the sky. Not a star. Not a plane. Something huge and dark, blocking out the stars as it passed overhead. It was shaped like nothing he had ever seen. Curved and organic, like a giant insect. "Command," he said, his voice shaking now. "I have visual confirmation. There is a ship above me. It is not human. Repeat, it is not human." The radio went silent. Then chaos erupted on all channels. Other pilots reporting the same thing. Ground stations detecting massive objects. Civilian reports flooding emergency lines. The ship above Tay suddenly lit up. Bright lights covered its surface. Then it accelerated away, moving toward the mainland, toward Seoul. Tay pushed his throttle forward and followed. He did not know what he could do against something so large. His weapons were designed to fight other jets, not alien warships. But he was a soldier. He could not just watch. The ship reached Seoul in minutes. It stopped above the city, hovering like a dark cloud. Other ships joined it, forming a circle above the capital. Millions of people looked up in terror. Then the ships began to broadcast. A loud voice spoke in a language no human understood. But the meaning was clear from the tone. It was a declaration, a statement of power, a warning. On his warship, Commander Vix watched the cities of Earth light up with panic. Cars filled the roads as people tried to flee. Emergency sirens wailed. It was exactly what he expected. Fear, confusion, weakness. "Send the landing parties," he ordered. "Start with the largest population centers. Show them our strength. Once they see what we can do, they will surrender quickly." Lieutenant Knoll looked at his datapad one more time. Something still bothered him about this planet, about these humans. A species that used nuclear weapons on itself and survived. A species that had been at war constantly for its entire recorded history. A species that had never known peace. But he said nothing. Commander Vix was confident, and confidence was valued in the Pelleran military. Doubt was weakness. The landing ships launched from the fleet. Hundreds of them fell toward Earth like metal rain. Each one carried 50 Pelleran soldiers in full combat armor. They had conquered 12 worlds before this one. They had never failed. As the first ships entered Earth's atmosphere, glowing red from the heat of re-entry, Tay landed his jet at his home base. Soldiers were running everywhere. Officers were shouting orders. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew what to do. But Tay knew one thing. Whatever these creatures wanted, they had chosen the wrong planet. Humans might fight each other constantly. They might be divided by borders and languages and beliefs. But when something threatened them all, they had a way of coming together. The aliens were about to learn what 10,000 years of constant warfare had created. The Pelleran landing ship touched down in a parking lot on the edge of Busan. Steam rose from its hull as the hot metal met the cool night air. The door opened with a hiss, and 7 soldiers walked out in single file. They were tall, nearly 2 meters each, with hard shells covering their bodies like armor. Their eyes were large and black, designed to see in darkness. Their hands ended in sharp claws. The squad leader was named Crix. He had fought on 6 planets before this one. He had killed hundreds of enemies. He feared nothing. He looked around at the strange world. Concrete buildings, bright lights, signs with symbols he could not read. A few ground vehicles sat in the parking lot, abandoned by their owners who had fled when the ship appeared. "Spread out," he ordered his soldiers. "Find the local inhabitants. Begin subjugation protocol." The soldiers moved forward. Their weapons were ready. These were plasma rifles capable of burning through steel. One shot could kill any creature they had ever encountered. They walked toward a small building with large windows. Light came from inside. Through the glass, they could see shelves filled with colorful packages, a shop of some kind. And behind the counter, a single human female stood watching them. Crix felt a moment of confusion. Why was she not running? Every other species ran when they saw Pelleran soldiers. It was natural. It was expected. But this human just stood there, her arms crossed, her face showing no fear. He pushed open the door and entered. His soldiers followed. The human did not move. "Creature," Crix said through his translator, "you are now property of the Pelleran Empire. Submit, and you will not be harmed. Resist, and you will be destroyed." The human was older, perhaps 50 years by the local time measurement. Her name was Hana, though Crix did not know this. She had served 20 years in the Korean army. She had trained soldiers. She had seen combat. She had retired to run this small convenience store and live a quiet life. Now aliens stood in her shop, telling her to submit. She sighed heavily. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a metal bat. It was old and dented. She had kept it there for thieves. "Get out of my store," she said calmly. Crix made the clicking sound of Peloran laughter. "You threaten us with a primitive club? You are a fool." He turned to one of his soldiers. "Demonstrate our power. Destroy one of the vehicles outside." The soldier aimed his rifle at a car through the window and fired. A beam of green light shot out. The car exploded in a ball of fire. Glass shattered. Metal twisted and melted. "Now," Crix said, turning back to the human. "Submit." Hana looked at the burning car. It was not hers. She looked back at the alien. Then, faster than Crix expected, she threw a glass bottle from the counter. It spun through the air and smashed against his face. Glass cut into the soft tissue around his eyes. Crix screamed and stumbled backward. He had never felt such pain. No creature had ever dared to attack him directly. Hana was already moving. She swung the bat hard and hit the nearest soldier in the knee joint. There was a cracking sound. The soldier fell. She hit him again in the head. He stopped moving. The other soldiers raised their weapons, but they hesitated. This was not in their training. Enemies were supposed to run or surrender. They were not supposed to attack. In that moment of hesitation, Hana pulled out her phone and called her nephew. Minho was a Marine stationed at a base 15 minutes away. She spoke quickly. "Aliens, my store, bring everyone." Then she threw another bottle. Minho received the call in his barracks. He was playing cards with 3 other Marines when his phone rang. He listened for 10 seconds, then he stood up. "Aliens are attacking my aunt," he said simply. The other Marines looked at him. One of them laughed nervously. "Aliens? I am not joking. Get your weapons. Get everyone. We are moving now." Within 5 minutes, 2 trucks full of Marines were speeding toward Busan. They had rifles, grenades, and knives. They had no idea what they were about to face, but they were Marines. They did not need to understand. They needed to fight. Back at the store, Hana had retreated behind the counter. 3 alien soldiers were down. Crix was blind in one eye and screaming orders. The remaining soldiers were firing their weapons, but Hana was fast. She moved between shelves, throwing whatever she could find, cans of food, bottles of soda, a fire extinguisher. When the Marines arrived, they found chaos. The store was on fire. Alien soldiers were shooting beams of light in all directions. And one old woman was beating an alien with a baseball bat while screaming insults. Minho did not hesitate. "Open fire!" The Marines raised their rifles and began shooting. The aliens had shields, but the shields flickered and died under the concentrated fire of 20 weapons. Bullets punched through their armor. Green blood sprayed across the walls. One alien charged at Minho. It was huge and fast. Minho dropped his rifle, pulled his knife, and met the charge. They crashed through a shelf together. The alien clawed at him, cutting his arm. Minho stabbed it in the throat, then again, then again. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, all 7 aliens were dead. 3 Marines were injured. Hana had a cut on her forehead. The store was destroyed. Minho helped his aunt to her feet. "Are you okay?" Hana wiped blood from her face. "I am fine, but they ruined my store. I just finished paying for it." Despite everything, Minho laughed. "We killed 7 aliens. And you are worried about your store?" Insurance does not cover alien invasions. In orbit, Commander Vix received the report from the Busan landing site. All 7 soldiers dead, killed by locals using primitive weapons and a metal club. He stared at the screen for a long time. Lieutenant Knowles stood beside him, reading other reports that were coming in from around the planet. Similar stories everywhere. Landing parties meeting unexpected resistance. Humans not running but fighting. Humans using vehicles as weapons. Humans setting traps. Humans attacking in groups with whatever they could find. "Commander," Knowles said quietly, "this species has been at war with itself for 10,000 years. They have never stopped fighting. Every human on this planet knows how to be violent." Vic said nothing. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. 48 hours after the first alien ships appeared, the leaders of Earth gathered for an emergency meeting. They met through video screens because there was no time to travel. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists all looked at each other across the digital connection. For the first time in human history, they all agreed on one thing. "We fight together," said the Korean president, "or we die alone." Every nation joined the alliance. Old enemies became friends. Countries that had pointed weapons at each other for decades now shared ammunition and intelligence. Borders opened. Armies merged. Humanity became one force with one purpose, and that purpose was war. In a command center deep underground in Seoul, a young man named June sat in front of 12 computer screens. He was a drone operator, one of the best in the Korean military. Before the invasion, he had run training exercises and border patrols. Now he coordinated with pilots from 12 different countries. "American Eagle Squadron, move to position 7, he said into his headset. "Japanese Hawk Squadron, provide cover from the east. Korean Dragon Squadron, you have the first strike." On his screens, he watched dozens of small dots move across a map. Each dot was a drone or aircraft. Each one followed his commands. In the distance, through the camera feeds, he could see Pelleran ground vehicles advancing toward a city. "All units, fire on my mark." He waited 2 seconds. "Mark." Missiles launched. Explosions filled the screens. 30 alien vehicles burned in 30 seconds. June allowed himself a small smile. Then he checked the next target and began the process again. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Humans had no plasma rifles. They had no energy shields, but they had numbers. They had anger. And they had 10,000 years of experience killing each other. Every weapon humanity had ever made was now pointed upward. In Daegu, an old woman named Sue became famous without trying to. She was 73 years old. She had lived through wars and hardships. She had survived everything life had thrown at her. When an alien soldier broke into her apartment building, she did not hide. She grabbed the biggest knife from her kitchen and chased the alien down 4 flights of stairs. Someone recorded it on their phone. The video spread across the world in hours. A small old woman screaming ancient curses while chasing a 7-foot alien soldier who was clearly terrified. The alien ran. It actually ran from a grandmother with a kitchen knife. Soldiers everywhere watched the video and laughed. If Grandmother Sue could fight, so could they. Morale rose. Fear disappeared. Humans began to enjoy the war. This confused the Pellerans more than anything else. In orbit, Commander Vix studied the reports with growing horror. His landing parties were being destroyed. His soldiers were being killed by creatures using primitive weapons, vehicles, and sometimes just their bare hands. One report described a human biting through a Pelleran soldier's neck. "They are insane," Vix muttered. "They fight without logic, without strategy. They just attack." Lieutenant Knoll shook his head. "No, Commander. They have strategy. It is just different from ours. They adapt. They improvise. Every human thinks like an individual warrior. We train our soldiers to follow orders. Humans train theirs to think for themselves." Vic slammed his claw on the console. "Enough! We will end this from orbit. Prepare the bombardment cannons. We will destroy their cities from above." The order went out to the fleet. Giant weapons powered up. They had used these cannons before on other worlds. One shot could destroy an entire city. No primitive species had ever survived orbital bombardment. The first shot fired. A beam of blue energy streaked toward Earth. And then something unexpected happened. Thousands of lights rose from the planet's surface. Missiles. Thousands of them. They had been aimed at each other for decades, waiting for a war that never came. Now they had a new target. Earth's combined nuclear arsenal flew toward the sky. The Peloran ships had shields, but they were designed to stop plasma weapons and energy beams. They were not designed to stop the combined fury of every nuclear weapon on Earth firing at once. The first warhead hit a shield. The shield flickered. The second warhead hit the same spot. The shield cracked. The third warhead broke through. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky. Vix watched in horror as ship after ship died. His fleet was burning. His soldiers were dying, and the humans were not stopping. More missiles kept coming. More explosions. More death. "Contact the High Council," he ordered, his voice shaking. "Request immediate reinforcements. We need more ships, more soldiers. We need everything." The message traveled across the galaxy at faster than light speed. It reached the Peloran High Council in minutes. They reviewed the combat data. They watched videos of humans fighting. They saw Grandmother Sue with her knife. They saw Marines charging into plasma fire. They saw civilians throwing bottles and swinging bats. An old admiral named Vorn had seen many wars in his long life. He had conquered countless worlds. But as he watched a human rip the antenna off a Peloran soldier and beat him with it, his mandibles began to shake. "Reinforcements denied," he announced to the council. "Order Commander Vix to retreat immediately." Another council member protested. "We cannot retreat. The Peloran Empire has never retreated." Admiral Vorn turned his ancient eyes toward the younger council member. "We have never faced a species like this. Look at them. They use their own nuclear weapons against us. They attack soldiers with cooking tools. They laugh while they die. This is not a primitive species. This is a species that has perfected violence." He pulled up more data on the main screen. Humans have been at war every single day of their recorded history. They have never known peace. War is not something they do. War is what they are. The council was silent. "We will mark this planet as forbidden," Admiral Vorn continued. "No Peloran ship will ever return here. If Commander Vix is wise, he will leave now, while he still can." The order reached Vix as another of his ships exploded. Retreat. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. But as he looked at the burning fleet around him, as he watched more missiles rising from the planet below, he understood. They had invaded the wrong world. "All ships," he announced, his voice hollow. "Begin retreat. Maximum speed. Get us out of this system." On the surface of Earth, humans watched the alien ships turn and run. They cheered. They celebrated. They had won. But deep in the underground command center, June watched his screens with different thoughts. The aliens were leaving, but they knew where Earth was now. And humans had just shown the galaxy what they could do. The war was not over. It was just beginning. The aliens were running, but humanity was not satisfied with defense. They wanted more. They wanted revenge. And they wanted to make sure no one ever tried to invade Earth again. In a research facility outside Seoul, a young engineer named Yuna had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red. Her hands shook from too much coffee, but she could not stop working. On the table in front of her sat the most important object in human history. A crashed alien shuttle. It had gone down in the mountains during the first night of the invasion. The pilot was dead. The ship was damaged but mostly intact. Korean military forces had recovered it and brought it to Yuna's facility. Her job was simple. Figure out how it worked. "The engine uses some kind of gravity manipulation," she muttered to herself, studying the diagrams on her computer. It bends space around the ship. That is how they move so fast. Her assistant, a young man named Taiho, looked over her shoulder. Can we copy it? I do not know yet. The materials are different from anything we have. The power source is... She paused, looking at a glowing crystal in the center of the engine. I do not even know what that is. We do not need to understand it completely, Taiho said. We just need to make it work. Yuna nodded slowly. He was right. They did not have time for perfect understanding. They needed results. The alien fleet was retreating, but they might return. Or other aliens might come. Humanity needed to be ready. She took a deep breath and began working faster. While Yuna studied the shuttle, military commanders around the world were making plans. They had captured alien communication devices during the ground fighting. Human linguists and computers worked together to decode the alien language. Within days, they could read Peloran messages, and those messages revealed something important. The alien fleet was not going home. They were gathering at a staging base on the dark side of Earth's moon. They were regrouping, planning, waiting. General Park looked at the intelligence reports in his Seoul command center. They are still in our system. They think they are safe because we cannot reach them. His aide frowned. We cannot reach them, sir. Our spacecraft are designed for orbit, not lunar travel. Even our fastest rockets would take days to reach the moon. Then we need faster rockets. The general picked up his phone. Get me Dr. Yuna at the research facility. Tell her we need that alien shuttle flying within 1 week. Yuna received the call. She wanted to laugh. 1 week? They barely understood how the engine worked. Flying it was impossible. But then she looked at her team. 20 engineers, all exhausted, all determined. She looked at the shuttle, strange and alien, but somehow not so different from the machines humans built. She thought about the soldiers who had died fighting, about Grandmother Sue with her knife, about everyone who had risked everything to save their planet. We will do it, she said. We will fly in 1 week. For 7 days, her team worked without rest. They made mistakes. They had accidents. One engineer lost 2 fingers when a power coupling exploded. He bandaged his hand and kept working. On the 7th day, the shuttle lifted off the ground. It floated 3 meters in the air, humming with alien power but controlled by human hands. Yuna watched with tears in her eyes. If they can fly here, she whispered, we can fly there. Word spread quickly. More crashed ships were recovered from around the world. More teams worked to repair them. Within 2 weeks, humanity had 12 operational alien vessels. They were not perfect. The controls were strange. The systems were unreliable. But they flew. A strike force was assembled. The best pilots from every nation, the toughest soldiers, the most dedicated warriors. They would fly to the moon and attack the alien staging base. A young conscript named Day was among them. 3 weeks ago, he had been a normal young man from Gwangju. He had never fired a weapon. He had never seen combat. The invasion changed everything. He had fought in the streets. He had killed aliens with his own hands. Now he was volunteering for a mission that might be suicide. His mother begged him not to go. You have done enough, she said through tears. Let someone else fight. Day hugged her gently. If not me, then who? Everyone must do their part. This is mine. The strike force launched at midnight. 12 ships carrying 200 soldiers. They flew past the orbital debris of destroyed Peloran warships. They passed satellites that humans had launched decades ago, now joined by the wreckage of alien technology. As they approached the moon, they saw the staging base. 50 Peloran ships sat on the gray surface, arranged in neat rows. Soldiers moved between them. Equipment was being repaired. They were preparing for a second attack. They did not expect humans to arrive first. All ships, attack formation, the mission commander ordered. Show them what happens when you invade Earth. The human ships dove toward the surface. They were not elegant. They wobbled and shook. Their pilots were learning as they flew. But they attacked with fury that no alien could match. Lieutenant Knoll saw them coming on his radar. His antennae went rigid with shock. "Commander Vix, human ships approaching!" Vix ran to the bridge of his flagship. He looked at the screens in disbelief. That is impossible. They have no space capability. How? Then he understood. They had captured Peloran ships. They had learned to fly them in just 2 weeks. "They followed us," Knoll whispered. "They actually followed us." The battle was chaos. Human ships crashed into the base, and soldiers poured out before the dust settled. Day led a boarding party onto a Peloran cruiser. He carried an axe. Around him, his squad carried hammers, knives, and captured alien weapons. The Pelorans expected ranged combat. They trained to fight at a distance, using their superior technology. But humans closed the gap. They charged through plasma fire. They accepted wounds that should have stopped them. They kept fighting until they could not stand. Day swung his axe at the first alien he saw. The blade bit deep into its shoulder. The alien screamed and fell. Another alien raised a weapon. A soldier beside Day shot it with a captured plasma rifle. They moved forward room by room, killing everything that moved. 40 minutes later, the ship was theirs. Day stood on the alien bridge, covered in green blood, breathing hard. His axe was bent and dull. His body was covered in cuts and burns. But he was alive, and the ship was human now. Across the base, similar victories occurred, not without cost. Many humans died, but more aliens died. And when Commander Vix tried to flee in his personal shuttle, human ships cut off his escape. His last transmission echoed across the galaxy. "Do not return to this system. Mark it forbidden. These creatures, they do not know how to stop." Then his shuttle exploded, hit by missiles from 3 different directions. The battle was over. Humanity had won again. But this time, they had not just defended their home. They had attacked. They had pursued. They had shown the galaxy that humans would not wait for enemies to come to them. Yuna watched the victory reports from her facility on Earth. She had not slept in a month, but she was already planning the next step. "We need to build more ships," she said to her team. "Better ships. Human ships. The galaxy knows we exist now. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." She looked up at the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, waiting, wondering about the strange creatures from the blue planet who had defeated the Peloran Empire. Let them wonder, she thought. Let them fear. We are coming. 1 month after the invasion began, the last Peloran ship limped out of the solar system. Its engines were damaged. Its hull was cracked. Half its crew was dead. The survivors stared at their screens in silence as Earth grew smaller behind them. They had come to conquer. They were leaving as refugees. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. Every city held parades. Every nation flew its flags alongside a new symbol, a blue circle representing the united planet. Fireworks filled the skies. People danced in the streets. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. But the celebrations eventually ended. And then, the real work began. In Busan, Hana stood in front of her convenience store, or what was left of it. The walls were burned. The roof had collapsed. Everything inside was destroyed. Insurance companies, as she had predicted, refused to pay. Alien invasion was not covered. She sighed and began picking through the rubble. A truck pulled up behind her. Minho stepped out, followed by a dozen Marines. They carried tools, building materials, and crates of supplies. "What is this?" Hana asked. Minho smiled. "We are rebuilding your store. The whole unit volunteered." "I cannot pay you." "You already paid us. You taught us that an old woman with a baseball bat can fight aliens. That is worth more than money. Hana tried to protest, but more trucks arrived. Civilians from the neighborhood, soldiers from other units, even some government officials. They had all seen the video of her first fight. She had become a symbol of human resistance. 3 weeks later, a new store stood where the old one had been. It was bigger and better than before. Above the door hung a sign with a picture of a baseball bat and the words, "Grandmother Hana's, we do not surrender." A statue was placed in the parking lot. It showed Hana holding her bat, face fierce, ready to fight. She complained that it made her look old. Nobody listened. In Seoul, Yuna led the newly formed Earth Space Defense Initiative. She had an office now with a window overlooking the city. She had a budget larger than most countries. She had scientists and engineers from every nation working under her command, but she rarely used the office. She was always in the laboratories, in the factories, in the testing facilities. Building, creating, preparing. The first human-designed spacecraft launched 6 months after the invasion. It was called the Unity. It combined alien technology with human engineering. It was faster than anything humans had ever built. It was armed with weapons that could destroy Peloran warships. Yuna watched it rise into the sky from the launch facility. Taiho stood beside her, now her second in command. "We built this," she said softly. "Humans built this." "They came to conquer," Taiho replied. "They taught us to fly instead." Yuna nodded. That would be the motto of the new fleet, painted on every ship, written in every manual, a reminder of what humanity had overcome. Tay, the pilot who had first spotted the invasion, became the commander of Earth's First Contact Response Unit. His job was simple. If more aliens came, he would be the first to meet them. His standing orders, which he wrote himself, were even simpler. "Shoot first, ask questions if they survive." Some people thought this was too aggressive. Tay did not care. The Pelorans had taught humanity an important lesson. The galaxy was dangerous. Kindness was a luxury that could be earned, not given freely. Day returned home to Gwangju after the moon battle. His mother cried when she saw him. He was different now, harder, quieter. But he was alive. He tried to return to normal life. He went back to his old job at a factory. He ate dinner with his family. He watched television and slept in his own bed. But it did not feel right. Something had changed inside him. 2 months later, he enlisted in the new Space Marine Corps. He trained harder than anyone. He volunteered for the most dangerous missions. He became one of the first humans to set foot on Mars, clearing abandoned Peloran equipment from the Red Planet. His mother stopped crying. She understood now. Her son was not running toward death. He was running toward purpose. Some humans were meant to be warriors. Day had discovered he was one of them. Across the galaxy, word of Earth spread quickly. The Peloran Empire collapsed within a year. Other species they had conquered rose up against them. The defeat at Earth had shown that the Empire could be beaten. Their former slaves took advantage of this weakness. But the news that traveled farthest was not about the Peloran defeat. It was about the humans themselves. Stories spread from trading post to trading post, from world to world. Stories of creatures that attacked with cooking tools, of old females chasing soldiers with knives, of beings that used nuclear weapons on their own planet and survived, of warriors who laughed while dying, of a species that had fought itself for 10,000 years and never learned to stop. The Galactic Encyclopedia, which cataloged every known species, added a new entry. It was short and terrifying. Earth, Sol 3, Class 7 Death World. Inhabitants, humans. Status, forbidden. Notes, species exhibits extreme aggression, psychological immunity to fear, and pack-bonding behavior. They weaponize everything, including their own emotions. Their art depicts violence. Their music celebrates war. Their history is an unbroken chain of conflict. Do not engage under any circumstances. If contact is made, flee immediately. They will pursue. Other species read this entry and added Earth to their forbidden lists. Trade routes were adjusted to avoid the Sol system. Exploration missions were canceled. The blue planet became the most avoided place in the galaxy, and humans did not mind at all. 1 year after the invasion, Minho and Dae sat on a rooftop in Seoul. Below them, the city hummed with activity. Above them, humanity's first warship, the Unity, passed through the night sky on its patrol route. Its lights blinked like a new star. Dae handed Minho a bottle of soju. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the ship cross the heavens. "Do you think more will come?" Dae asked finally. "More aliens?" Minho thought about the question. He thought about Hana and her baseball bat, about grandmother Sue and her knife, about Yuna and her engines, about Tae and his fighter jets, about June and his drones, about every human who had fought, who had died, who had refused to surrender. He thought about 10,000 years of human history, every war, every battle, every conflict. All of it had been practice. All of it had prepared humanity for this moment, for the day when enemies came from the stars. They had passed the test. But there would be more tests, more enemies, more wars. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, and now the galaxy knew that Earth existed. Minho lifted his bottle in a toast to the stars. "I hope so," he said with a grim smile. "I hope so." Above them, the Unity sailed on through the darkness, carrying humanity's message to the universe. "We are here. We are ready. We are not afraid. Come and try again if you dare. We will be waiting."